Yeah, today we're going to be covering a few topics, starting off with Missouri terminated the emergency rule limit to trans care for minors and some adults. So, as far as what this was, let me see if I can pull up. I had it in my Discord at one point under news. Let me see if I can pull up the Missouri ban. Here we go. Missouri General essentially banned gender affirming care for most trans adults via emergency rule. Essentially, the requirement was 3 years of dysphoria, 18 months of therapy sessions, and it doesn't allow people with autism or depression. Essentially, it was like any type of pre-existing condition that could affect your like mental state or anything like that. They essentially referred to like that way where you weren't able to get care unless you followed those things. So like it was kind of absurd because like not having access to proper gender affirming care can be the cause of the reason why you're distressed. So in general, it was very dumb. And it was scary because people could genuinely die because of that legislation. A lot of providers just decided they didn't want to cover it anymore because they don't want to risk their license on gender affirming care, and there's not a lot of people that utilize gender affirming care. So, in general, compared to like the whole populace, so it caused a lot of problems. And it looks like from what we can see now, they terminated the rule on Tuesday. Now this is after several delays that were done by a judge. A judge looked at it and delayed the starting of it, I think twice. And then now they've completely canned it. The reason why, by the way, that they've canned it, I think is more than likely due to the fact that they're not going to be able to defend this type of ban in court. So let's go over this article here. Missouri officials on Tuesday. Let me go ahead and zoom in so that way y'all can see this a little bit better. There we go. Missouri officials on Tuesday abruptly terminated an unusual emergency rule proposed by the Republican Attorney General that would have placed limits on trans care for minors and some adults. The move was announced without explanation on the Missouri Secretary of State website, which stated, "This emergency rule is terminated effective May 16th, 2023. This rule, pushed by Attorney General Andrew Bailey, would have required adults and children to undergo more than a year of therapy to fulfill other requirements before they could receive gender-affirming care, treatments such as puberty blockers, hormones, and surgery." Bailey said in a statement on Tuesday evening that his office was standing in the gap until the GOP-controlled legislature decided to act on the issue. So essentially what this means right here is he knows that this type of legislation, even in would probably either not pass or it would be unpopular and protested against and would overall fail in court. So he decided, I'll just do an emergency rule and I'm just going to implement it. There you go. You know, he even says, "I'm proud to have shed light on the experimental nature of these procedures," which is insane because gender affirming care, we've had people in the last 100 years that have been on gender affirming care, even before that. So gender affirming care is not a new procedure. Many things that we take in our daily lives every single day for medication is far newer than gender affirming care. So like, for example, not many people know this, but we've been doing vaginoplasty, which is the procedure to give a trans woman or even cis women who've had like birth defects or an accident a surgical made vagina. We've been doing that since before the moon landing. So these type of procedures have existed for a very long time. And this is not experimental procedures. Like essentially these people are just making up bullshit because they hate trans people. That's it. That's all this is this is just a hatred of trans people. And this type of legislation, or this emergency rule, I mean, would have killed trans people, because trans people, we need gender affirming care. A lot of us do. And it would have been very, very bad if this type of legislation was allowed, or this emergency rule, I mean, would have been allowed to stay. So I'm very, very glad that this bill here, or this emergency rule, sorry, I keep saying that, was overturned. It's definitely a good thing that it was overturned, and it's going to allow Missouri trans people to continue to access care. Now, these types of emergency rulings, I think, are probably going to be becoming more common. But I do think similar actions like what we're seeing right now are going to happen, where they end up failing in court. I really think a lot of this gender affirming care ban stuff overall will fail in court. Some other things like bathroom bans, I think, are going to be a little bit harder to fail, unfortunately. Like the bathroom ban that's about to be signed in Florida, I think, is probably going to remain, because there was one, I think, in one of the Carolinas that was passed, and that one remained in place for a while. But they didn't have any, like, it wasn't like a crime to do it, but the one in Florida is. So I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, but I do think most of this legislation and emergency rules and all that that's being passed will be overturned in court. So that is the overall feeling that I have about this ban. So things are going to get better. We're just kind of in a really rough patch for right now of where this care is and kind of where it's going. It's so cool how with American politics now is just what Republicans can get away with. Yeah, well, the Republicans don't care about the rule of law at all. They knowingly passed or like implemented this emergency rule while full well knowing that it would fail in court, simply because they hate trans people that much. Like, don't ever get it mistaken. The reason why they're passing all of these bills and implementing these rules is because they hate you. And the thing is to the average voter as well, this type of legislation and rulings are genuinely crazy. The average voter's opinion on trans people is, I don't really know a whole lot about them, but, live and let live, Like, that's genuinely, I would say, the most common is a general apathy. Not necessarily outright support, but an apathy to trans issues. And that's the reason why, with a lot of these things they're pushing, it's not helping their voting numbers with Republicans, because people simply either don't care or they're apathetic. And that combined nature has made trans issues to be a loss for Republicans. So I'm hoping that this loss of it, of votes and elections and everything else continues to be pushed until Republicans realize that this is not an issue they're going to win, that trans rights are human rights, and that, they can't really push against that. But I think it's going to take time to get to that point, because right now they're just extremely desperate for any type of culture war issue that will allow them to get elected, because they're really desperate after 2022's loss.